Welcome to the deep dive. So you've been looking into how to stay consistent on YouTube, right? For channel growth, audience building, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We've gathered your resources, and today our mission is basically to distill the really actionable advice. How can you actually do this whole consistency thing without getting totally burned out?
Exactly. Because it's easy to say be consistent, but how? We saw like 5 main themes emerge from the sources you sent over.
Okay.
Yeah, things like setting a realistic schedule, batch recording, and using YouTube Scheduler, having a solid content plan, staying organized, and importantly, avoiding that burnout phase, and finally, figuring out what really motivates you.
Right. So think of this as the practical roadmap, your shortcut to consistent content, maybe.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's start with that schedule then. The sources really hammered home being, well, honest about the time you actually have. Why is aiming for, say, one solid video a week that you always hit better than maybe trying for more and missing?
Well, it's all about predictability for the viewer. If they know, okay, Tuesday at 5 p.m., there's a new video, they can kind of build that into their routine.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it creates anticipation, it keeps them engaged, and honestly, setting that specific day and time, it builds trust. It shows you're reliable.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just for you, it's for them too.
Precisely.
Okay, so schedule set. Now, what about this batch recording idea? Recording like several videos in one go instead of scrambling each week. How does that actually help beyond just, saving a chunk of time initially?
Well, what's interesting, I think, is the mental space it frees up. When you're in that filming zone, that flow state, you can knock out multiple videos more efficiently.
Right, you already set up the lightings right.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you use YouTube's scheduling tool. So even if life throws a curveball next week, you've got content locked and loaded. It really takes the pressure off that constant deadline feeling.
Gotcha. Less panic, more planning. Okay, so we have a schedule, maybe a few videos banked. But what do we make? How do we generate ideas that, actually land? The sources mentioned content planning.
Right, and a content calendar is sort of your visual guide there. But just having a calendar isn't enough. The sources suggest really using tools, think Google Trends, maybe TubeBuddy, even just your own YouTube analytics.
So looking at data.
Yeah, see what people in your niche are searching for, what videos of yours have done well. If you see like a sudden spike in searches for beginner knitting tutorials and you're a knitting channel, well, there's your next video idea, right?
Makes sense. Use the data.
Mm-hmm. And mixing up formats helps too. Don't just do tutorials. Maybe throw in a vlog, a review, a Q&A. Keeps it interesting for you and the audience.
Okay, cool. Plan in place. But this sounds like a lot of work still. How do we keep this engine running without, hitting a wall? Burnout seems like a real risk.
It absolutely is. And the source is stressed structure here. Like maybe Mondays are for filming, Wednesdays for editing, Fridays for uploading and community stuff, something like that.
So dedicated day.
Yeah, it stops everything blurring together, that feeling of being on 24/7. And related to this managing perfectionism, this came up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Aim for good enough and consistent improvement, not some impossible standard of flawless for every single video. That's a fast track to burnout. Taking actual breaks, planned breaks, and maybe even telling your audience you're taking a week off. That's okay too.
Okay, communicate the breaks, manage the perfectionism. That feels achievable. Finally, what about motivation? What actually keeps people showing up week after week long term?
Ultimately, I think the sources point back to why you started, that intrinsic motivation. What do you actually enjoy about creating?
Right, the core reason.
Yeah, and engaging with your audience helps massively. Reading comments, replying, asking questions. It makes it feel less like shouting into the void,
Yeah.
It provides that feedback loop, that connection. Plus, experimenting sometimes. Trying a new style or topic can reignite that creative spark.
Okay, so let's recap the actionable stuff for listeners. To stay consistent. First, set a realistic weekly upload schedule. Pick a specific day and time.
Predictability.
Second, leverage batch recording and YouTube Scheduler to build a buffer and reduce weekly pressure.
Get ahead of the game.
Third, develop a content plan. Use a calendar, research trends and analytics, and mix up your video formats.
Keep it fresh and relevant.
Fourth, stay organized with dedicated days for tasks, actively manage perfectionism, good is often good enough, and take scheduled breaks. Don't forget to communicate those breaks.
Absolutely crucial for longevity.
And finally, fifth, connect with your why. Find your intrinsic motivation and really engage with your audience. That interaction can be fuel.
Exactly. It's that combination, that consistent effort across these areas that really builds momentum and a loyal following over time. It's not just one thing, it's the system.
Totally. So here's a final thought to leave everyone with. Looking at these 5 areas, scheduling, batching, planning, organizing, avoiding burnout, and motivation, which one feels like the easiest first step for you to implement or improve right now? What's one small change you could make today that might have the biggest impact on your YouTube consistency moving forward? Something to chew on.